resources like we're going to talk about today to the colleges that I work with throughout the state of Florida. And I tell you, managing money and this segment is really personal to me because I think back to when I got my first job. My first job, I was an F&I manager. I made $90,000 a year. But in that first year, I ended up over $350,000 in debt. I think about Drake's song, I went from 0 to 100 real quick. And, how I did that was I didn't plan, I didn't organize, I didn't have any financial goals. The only thing I had was impulse purchases. And what helped me get out of that financial bind was I established a relationship with a banker. And what he showed me is like what we're going to talk about today is we're going to learn to build a budget, and we use what we call a budget toolkit. And I think that's something that Kimberly is going to put in the chat box and may have already sent it out to you, but please take a look at that because we're going to talk through it during this presentation. But it was a great tool to help me get organized and help me find a way to get out of that financial bind. But one of the big things that it did do was I started creating successful money management habits. I established a relationship with that banker I mentioned, but it was something that I established where I would set up a annual appointment, because you think about it, we go to the doctor once a year to check on our physical health. And, you should always do that, even at this stage, is check on your fiscal health. So if you have a banking relationship or if you're bank curious, find someone that you can trust and have those in-depth conversations with so you can be on track with your budget. And I'm so excited that we have a great group here today to go through this presentation. But before we get started, I know everybody came for a reason. So I'd love to hear from a few of you just to tell me, when you hear managing money, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Feel free to speak out or type it in the chat box, and Kimberly will read it out to me. Okay.
Oh, may I mention something?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Well, for me, my father's the one in my household who takes care of all of our financial accounts. So I am completely unaware of how to do anything. Plus, my father likes doing this because he feels like it's his own role. For me, I want to be independent. So I want to know what I need to do so that I can learn how to manage my money so that when I move out, I have everything already planned out, So that's why I'm here. So yeah.
I love it, and I like the reason why, because you want to be independent and you want to know these things for yourself, and that's great because you can always depend on your father, but it's easier if you understand and create your own healthy financial habits. Thanks for sharing that. Anyone else would like to share?
So in the chat, we have Sebastian that mentioned, it just went up, savings accounts. That's what comes to mind. And then also we have cutting off some expenses. Carmen just commented, managing money to me is budgeting. I live alone and I am the person in charge of all of my finances.
Awesome. I love it. Well, you're all here for the right reason, and we're going to get started. First of all, today we're going to talk about setting financial goals, how to identify and prioritize what to save for. Then we're going to discuss some money habits, ways to track your expenses and know where your money's going. That's very important. Then I'm going to share some money management tips to help you along the way. And then lastly, I'll share some online resources that you can utilize to help you through your financial journey. So let's get going. And, I always love sharing stats during my presentation. And one huge stat that I always like to point out is, 63% of Americans actually live paycheck to paycheck. And, when you first hear that number, you might think, okay, well, those are wage earners. But one fact about that is it's a quarter of that 63% make over $150,000 a year. And I think the main reason is the lack of setting financial goals. And, when you set a financial goal, it has to be something that's important to you. And if it's important to you, you got to be motivated to work towards it. And first of all, you have to really identify a financial goal. How many of you have set financial goals before? I know school may be one, or uh, I love to hear a few of you share financial goals that you may have in mind. Or if you haven't thought of one, just say, yeah, never thought of a financial goal.
For me, I'm not sure if this is a financial goal, but when I was in high school, my goal was to make sure my parents did not pay for college. So I applied to all the scholarships I possibly could. So that's a that financial goal was achieved. So I guess that I would say that's my financial goals. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a definitely a financial goal. Awesome. And you keep in mind, financial goals can be long term and short term. I did this workshop before the Final Four. I had a student say, "Hey, I want to have a big screen TV for the Final Four." So that was a short term goal. And then I had and one thing that I always say you should think about, retirement. I mean, you think retirement, you're like, okay, well, why are you saying think retirement? I haven't even started my career yet. But I had my college roommate. Uh, our freshman year, he would put on our refrigerator a sticker that said "Retire 45." And I thought it was funny at first because I'm like, well, you haven't even started your job, and it was something that was important to him, and he made that a goal, a written down goal that he had. But what he would do to work towards that goal, he wouldn't take all the trips. I mean, I was the guy that, hey, anytime we had a trip, going to Mardi Gras, going to Cancun, I was there for every trip, but he would moderate what he did. And just because he had that goal in mind,
Mhm.
he was working a part-time job, but he would do things to keep his eye on that prize, so to speak. And now he's 45 years old. He's retired. I'm still working, and he's the one laughing now because he does what he wants to on a daily basis. But that's something to think about. It's like, hey, no goal is too small or too far away to start thinking about, because you think about it when you have a goal, that's like your roadmap. You're always working towards that. So whatever goal you have, you know, it's never too early to start working towards it.
Jeff, we have a couple of comments in the chat as well. So buying a new car, buying a house, and then saving for grad school, which is definitely, these are solid long-term goals. Maybe buying a car would be more of a new car. Maybe it's the down payment can be hefty for some of them. So that might be short-term, long-term, but great goals.
Absolutely. And yeah, and it's good. And that brings us to the next segment of the presentation, is like that budget toolkit that was sent out. We should open it and look at that second page. It's going to look like this. You're going to see where it says, what are my financial goals? And I'll give you an example of mine. A short-term one that I had at the beginning of this pandemic was I like working out. I go to the gym every day, but I wasn't able to do that. So I had a short-term goal was to build a home gym. So I was able to add that, but then I had to think about, how was I going to pay for that gym? So, that's the first thing. I visualized what I wanted, then I knew the steps that I had to take to get there. But also, the reason why we want to write down your goals, and it's so important. Think about this again. I'm gonna throw some stats out at you. 84% of Americans don't write down goals at all. 13% have goals but don't write them down. 3% write down their goals. So again, when you have something clearly stated that you're working towards, it gives you clarity in the direction to obtain the goal. So that's why we want to make sure that we write down our goals, so we visualize it, we see it, and then we can work towards it. And then at the bottom of that page, we're going to see a little section where how we're going to reach our goals, and that's going to be activity. So what are we going to do? It's going to come a little clearer of steps that we can take as we go through the presentation. But think about that. Think about the action, the time it's going to take to actually reach that goal. So I'll give you an example now. Like one thing that I did since I've been home for over a year, working from home, I sold things on Mercari, to help me pay for my goals. So anything that's going to create additional funds, it can be coupons, things that you or an activity that you're going to commit to help you reach that goal. So that's just food for thought. But we'll go through more tips on activities that we can do to reach our goals. And I'll pause there to see if anyone has any questions.
There was just a quick question about if the PowerPoint would be available to them after the presentation.
Absolutely. I'll make sure I send a copy out to everyone. Great question.
Okay. That's it in the chat.
Well, great. And the next thing we have to think about when we start structuring our budget is we want to think about, okay, well, what's our monthly income? But more importantly, what expenses do we have? And then where's the money going? Because we have to think about how are we tracking our expenses? Because if we don't realize how much money that we're spending on impulse buys, I'll give you an example. Because you can kind of run into expenses being a habit. And a good example of that would be like in my normal role, I would visit branches and things like that around the state. And when I go into a branch, I have branch managers I constantly work with. And this one branch manager, every time I go in, he would have a monster drink. He would drink like 3 or 4 of those monster drinks a day. And you think about it, each time he has a monster drink, it's like $2.50. So if you're drinking 3 of them, it's like $10 a day on that habit. And that's just an impulse because he's something that he does habitually. He has to have this monster drink when he has conversations, when he has meetings. So, and you don't think about, you're spending $10 a day on a monster drink. So habits can really cause you to bust your budget, but we really have to find out where our money's going by tracking our expenses. And I'll tell you one method that I use that I found to be really effective is to buy all of my expenses on one credit card. And I do it for a couple of reasons. One is it makes it easy for me to see all of my expenses so I can reconcile my expenses. And in my Wells Fargo account, I'm able to have it categorized in different categories, which help me recognize where my money's going on a chart, whether it's going to housing, it's going to groceries, utilities, wherever it's going. That makes it a little easy. Another reason why I do it is to prevent fraud. So if my card was to get compromised, I'll know, okay, well, I'll pay all of my expenses with this Visa card. So I can easily shut that down, get a new card issued into my mobile wallet and begin using it again. So that's another reason. But the most important reason is I like to get cash through credit. I'll use my credit card. I'll pay all of my expenses. And at the end of the month, I'll pay that card off. But what I do is I get cash back with that card that I use. So for the normal expenses that I would spend on a monthly basis, I'm going to do it anyway. So why not get paid for it? So that's my method of tracking my expenses. And, I do this workshop often. I had a student that was attending the workshop and she said, hey, I like to write everything out. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. But she brought out a binder this thick that had every expense that she spent on a monthly basis. Well, it was like a year to be in that thick binder, but that was what she felt comfortable with. So the most important thing is to find a method to track your expenses that's going to be easy, and that makes it something that you're likely to stick with. And I'd love to hear from a few of you if you are tracking your expenses now and what method that you use to do it.
So I'm actually like that girl. I have a thick binder too where I physically write it out. But that's what works for me.
I like it. You think about it, sometimes old school works best,
Somebody wrote in the chat a good old fashioned Excel spreadsheet. That's another kind of old school way of doing it.
There you go. Whatever works, whatever you're comfortable with, long as you have a method, so find a method that works for you And that's something that will help you drive success. Was there something else, Kim, that you had?
Yeah. So somebody suggested looking up personal budget templates. There's some of those that are free online available to students. Um, Saving receipts and monthly spending reports from the bank. Yeah, that's definitely a good way of tracking it too.
Absolutely. And keep in mind, once you find a good method, that it should also be a method to help you identify possibly things that are inaccuracies that may be on your account. So something that will help you identify fraud quicker, because now we're in this COVID environment, and identity theft and fraud has risen as well. So we really have to be cautious and make sure that we have a method to protect ourselves as well.
I review personally my statements. I set aside time, every couple of weeks, sometimes once a month, to look at everything, because I've even seen, servers tax on, and I'm just throwing it out there. I'm a great tipper because I used to be a waitress myself. So I've seen servers, add on, and that's it's stealing from me essentially. So, I've had to dispute. I also I'm a big believer in saving the actual receipt that you write onto, so that I know how much I tipped and all that. But anyway, you can review it on there and make sure that your charges are accurate. So I very closely look at my stuff too.
Awesome. And just for clarity, you never did that.
No, I was a great server. I earned my great tips.
Great. Thank you for sharing, Kim. And next, really the money equation is simple. We have income, we have expenses going out, and then we have our net cash flow. If your net cash flow is positive, that's great. You're going to have additional money that you can use for saving and all the other things that we think about when we talk about paying ourselves first. And then if you have negative cash flow, that's just an opportunity for us to reduce some expenses or find ways to make additional money. So now we're going to look at the next part of the budget toolkit. This will be page 3. Looking at it, this is where we want to identify our income. And I know, being a student, you're going to have quite a bit of untraditional income. You're going to have income that comes from scholarships, grants, money from home, part-time jobs. So you think about things like if you have scholarships and grants, things of that nature, you annualize that untraditional income and divide it by 12, and that'll give you your monthly income. And if it's regular income from a job, you'll just plug that in, and that'll be part of what you get on your monthly and if it's weekly, you'll round it up and make it your monthly income, or total it up for a few months. I would say that's the best thing to do. If it's really untraditional and it fluctuates a lot, I'll give you an example. Let's say you're a server, and your tips fluctuate during spring break. It's higher than during off season. It's a little lower. So we want to take an average and come up with our monthly income there. But yeah, that's the easy way to do it. Then this is the big part of the budget worksheet. This is really where we discover where everything's going, because we itemize everything here. This takes time. This isn't a 5-minute exercise, but you want to itemize everything: your home expenses, food, transportation, break everything down. And good resources to pull that information is going to be from your bank statements. And I know Erica said she has the binder. Get your binder out, and we'll put all this information. We'll plug it in, because this is going to be the true way for us to find out what we're spending. And I'll give you an example. One thing that always busts my budget is going to be in that food category. In my role, I usually travel the state. Not in a normal world, when it's not COVID, I'm traveling 90% of the time. And one thing that I would always do is go to Starbucks, and I wouldn't go for breakfast. I wouldn't go for lunch. I would go in that in-between area, and I would go in. I'd get a venti green tea latte, double espresso with soy milk, and a protein bistro box. and that was $15 a day. So you think about that. I'm going to Starbucks every day. This is a habit, because I have to have my Starbucks in between breakfast and lunch. And, $15 a day on a 20-day work week, that's $300 a month. That's $3,600 a year that I was paying for Starbucks. So it's like, okay. And, really, I didn't think about it because it's a habit that I had to have. But you think about it, I'm paying $3,600 for coffee, and I have a perfect coffee machine at my house. I would just wave by to it and go do a daily donation to Starbucks. So you really have to capture what you're doing and identify those small things. And what it took for me, if there's a good thing that came from COVID, it was me identifying a $3,600 hit in my budget, which I can apply to my home gym that I told you that goal that I created. So really, this is the most important step, is to identify where all of your expenses are going. And I tell you, groceries is another opportunity that I found, because I'm an impulse guy. I told you earlier, I would go to the grocery store without a list, and I would easily go and go in for eggs and milk, and then I'll go down the chip aisle, the ice cream aisle, and what do you know? I ended up $30, $40 more than I planned to spend in the grocery store. But now, things that have helped me curb that are, I would actually order my groceries, do curbside pickup, or even have them delivered. So, you just have to create, first of all, you have to identify the opportunity, then you can find ways to improve it. And I'll pause there to see if anyone has any budget busters that they love to share. Now that I've told you about my Starbucks fail.
We have a couple of comments in the chat. Someone said it was the public sandwiches for them, that they get them every time. Me too. Whenever I see in the sales flyer the chicken tender sandwich, I'm always like, yes, now's the week. Dunkin' Donuts after school. I added don't go shopping at Publix or any grocery store when you're hungry, because then you end up wanting to buy a lot of different stuff. Somebody commented that you made them feel better about their own Starbucks habit. So, free student Amazon Prime is something to be careful with as well, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this happens to anybody else, but I'll be, on my computer and I'll just find my way to the Amazon website. And then I'm like, let me look at today's deals, And then if you really look at them, sometimes the deals are not really that great. It's just like, like 10% off of something that's already overpriced. So, but you fool yourself into thinking like, oh, I'm looking to see if there's something that I need, on there. So yeah.
Absolutely.
That's my struggle.
I mentioned, these challenges that I have, but I don't want it to seem like, hey, you never have any fun, never buy any fun things. And budgets aren't like that. You plan for your fun things. So how many of you have ever heard of the 50-30-20 rule? Show some emojis, hands up. And for those of you who haven't, the 50-30-20 rule it's just a simple way to start structuring your budget and basing it off 50% being your actual needs, 30% goes to your wants, and 20% to your savings. So that's a good way to kind of begin structuring everything. And that 30% is your fun stuff. But, like people that like impulse purchases like me, like Starbucks and things like that, plan those expenses. And what I do now is I think about, I have a splurge amount. So I might have $100 that I'm going to put on a debit card that I use solely for splurges for the month. And once that allotted amount is gone, then all the fun stuff is gone. But it's planned. So it's more structured rather than me just going ham and going to Starbucks every day and $300 in coffee a month. It's controlled. It's $100 and boom, that's it. Once it's gone, it's over. So always plan, think of everything, and it's think of the structure that you can have, and that will help you stay organized with your budget.
Jeff, have you heard of the 80/20 of that? So for those that have a hard time distinguishing between needs and wants and where that line gets kind of blurred at times, just kind of like simplifying it and thinking about it like 80/20. So at least, you know, like the 20% is going towards your debt repayment, your savings goals and things of that nature. So it makes it a little bit easier for some folks to manage that other end of the spectrum a bit. That was just something we always talk about the 50/30/20 as well, but it was something that I read the other day. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So.
Yeah, I like that. I like that perspective on it. Awesome. And this is the next section. We just talked about the 20%, and this is where we're going to identify our savings. And think about savings as a whole. Within that 20%, I know some of you may work now, and if you have an opportunity to participate in a 401k, I mean, even if it's a part-time job and they allow you that, take part in it because that's going to help increase your savings. But always think about putting money towards your retirement, or if it's not structured as a retirement fund, think about it just as a long-term savings fund, and it'll begin to build as you continue to contribute to it. But yeah, and the next section that we want to look at is after we've identified our income, we've subtracted our expenses and our savings, then we'll have our net cash flow. So ideally, we would love for that cash flow to be positive. If it's positive, that's great. We can apply more to our savings. But if we have a negative number, then we need to start looking at some ways that we can reduce our expenses. And one thing that I always think about is, if I don't have money left, if I'm looking at it where I don't have money left over, what am I spending on? Are the things I'm spending on, are they important to me? Do I really need it? And I think that's probably the most important question you can ask yourself. Do you really need it? And I'll give you an example. Uh, like I said, I've been in this role for over a year where I'm working from home. And about 4 months ago, my tailor that makes my suits, because typically when in my normal day to day, I'm on campus, I'm wearing a suit, depending on what time of year it is. So he called me and said, "Hey Jeff, we have a discount on the fabrics. You can get your fabrics at half price." So that's a significant savings for me to get a suit at half price. But then I begin to think about it. It's like, okay, do I really need that now? I'm not traveling anymore, and my work uniform now is a polo and swimming trunks. So I'm like, okay, well, I love to get a suit. It's a great deal, but do I really need it now? Because I don't know when I'm going to be able to go out, when I'm going to have to wear a suit. And if I buy a suit now, all this COVID eating, am I even going to be able to fit it? So things like that come to mind. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to pass on that because that's something that I don't need at this moment. So if you always ask yourself, do I really need it? And then you want to always think about paying everything on time, because if you should incur late fees or anything like that, that can throw your budget out of whack because you're going to pay an additional $30 to $40 on late fees. So, if there's always advise, if there is ever a situation where you can't make a payment as planned, contact the lender. They're always willing to work with you, and a no phone call can easily affect you on your credit report. And and credit is so important for us because we need credit for everything now. You think about, you need credit to get an apartment, to get your next job, do background checks. And I don't want to go too far sideways, but credit, that's an idea of a financial goal as well. Just by a show of hands, how many of you have established credit? Okay, awesome. Some hands going up. I like it. But think about credit is I've had students tell me, hey, I don't want credit. I want to pay everything by cash. I don't want to. I'm afraid of getting in debt. But credit is a I think it's going to be a commodity that you need to function and obtain other financial goals. But one thing that I would say is, and Kim, please put this in the chat box. Go to annualcreditreport.com and please go take a look at your credit report. Know where you stand. Know what's on your credit report. Because sometimes you can be surprised. I've had students that would attend a workshop and say, hey, I don't have any credit. Then we would usually do series, and next time they'll come to the series and say, hey, I pulled my credit and I found a bunch of things that were on there that didn't belong to me. So if for no other reason, go to annualcreditreport.com. It will allow you to see your credit report at least once a year. And now they're allowing more frequent because of COVID and all the identity theft that's prevalent. So please take advantage of that. And I'll pause there to see if anyone has any questions. I know I went a few different directions, but if you have a question, please.
For this website, oh yeah, I have a question. For this website, how do you trust, like, how do you know if who's providing this information about your credit, like where you're standing? Like, how can you trust that they're providing you like accurate information?
Well, you mean from annualcreditreport.com or your credit repository in general?
Yeah, your credit repository in general.
Yeah, a good question. And the important thing is going to pull your credit so you know what's on there, and you would have to validate that, because by going to annualcreditreport.com, you're getting a raw data version of your credit report, so you can verify everything that's on that report. And if it's something that's inaccurate or something you don't recognize, you'll have the opportunity to dispute that, because these repositories get the information from lenders or from anybody that reports your credit information to the bureau. They will gather that information and combine it on a credit report. So it's to your benefit to at least take advantage of looking at your credit report so you know what's going on in there, because I've been a victim of identity theft. So now I subscribe to a identity theft service where I have the ability to lock my credit report, and if there's anything that happens, I get alerted. So that's just an extra step that I took. But just going to annualcreditreport.com, you have a free opportunity to get a free copy and for you to visually verify everything yourself. Great question.
I also was a victim of identity theft, and it was really, really a horrible process to go through. But I have my credit is always on a freeze right now. And I also have a fraud alert on my account, so that, there's extra steps that people have to take to try and make any action with my using my credit and using my identity.
Yeah. And Kim, I know you can share like I have. It's a headache to have to go and clean up all the items that you didn't even know were there. But if you're going to buy a house, they want to make sure that collection wasn't yours, or whatever, that fraudulent account wasn't yours, or if you get a job, if someone has a criminal record and that's showing up on your credit profile or something, it can really cause a lot of strife when you have to go back and explain or clear up things that don't belong to you. And I think, Isabella, you have a question or a comment? Saw the hand raised.
Might have been from before.
Gotcha. Kim, do we have any other questions?
No more questions.
Okay. And moving on to some money management tips. And one thing that we have to consider is the types of expenses we have. We have fixed expenses that will be items like rent, car note, insurance. These things are pretty fixed. So it would take a lot to change those to affect your budget. Flexible expenses, those are going to be things like utilities, groceries, and you can adjust those to some levels. Like utilities, you may be able to adjust that by turning the thermostat up or down a couple of degrees. Groceries, like I talked about, creating a grocery list, or either have your groceries brought curbside to eliminate the opportunity for impulse. But the biggest opportunity to control spending will be within the discretionary expenses. Those are the things like eating out. My buddies at Starbucks, uh, you can create and control ways to reduce your expenses. Like for instance, I was fortunate to eliminate Starbucks by having to work from home. But if I was still traveling on a daily basis, I might say, hey, okay, well, Fridays or Hump Day Wednesday, I'll go and go to Starbucks and get my fix, within that allotted budget that I have. So it's ways to control it, but you really have to make an effort. And if we go back to the beginning of the presentation, when I said when we set goals, it has to be something important to us, because you're thinking about, hey, I'm gonna give up Starbucks for what? Why am I doing it? So if it's something important to you, you don't mind making a sacrifice, a small sacrifice to cut out a couple of days of Starbucks, or going without ice cream or something from the grocery store to stay on track with your goal. But those are just ways to reduce your expenses. Focus on the discretionary, because that's going to be your largest opportunity. And next, I want to share some ideas with you for reducing expenses. A couple things that I did, like I shared with you earlier, like Mercari. That was a great way for me to sell some items that I wasn't using around the house to create extra money for my gym. And then there are things that you can do, like I recently started meal prepping. I found that if I meal prep for a week, I'm saving probably uh, 30 to 40% more than if I bought groceries and had more waste and cooked every day. So that's another way that I got creative. Reduce my eating out, reduce the excessive grocery buying. Um, and one thing that I always recommend that you do when you get into looking at all your expenses that you have, um, review some of the monthly expenses that you have, like your phone bill, your auto insurance. Always call and say, hey, is there a better rate? I'm shopping my insurance now. And a lot of times you'll find that you're able to create savings just by calling the current companies that you're with, because they don't want to lose your business. They want to keep that relationship with you. Use coupons. One thing I would say is a good use of coupons. Like if you have a BOGO, the money that you would have left over with the BOGO, put that in your savings. And that's an extra way to create additional funds. And I'd love to hear from a few of you things that you're currently doing to save money or reduce expenses now.
I'm taking the turnpike less.
Uh,
So one way I take the turnpike, the other way on the way back, I don't. And it adds up over a month. So it's one strategy that I'm using.
yeah, I know those turnpikes are pricey.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, if you're going to work every day, it's just a little bit of savings, but it's something at the end of the month to put towards something else. So,
Yeah. And I like you
um,
said that, it's a little bit, but every little bit counts, because you think about it, how I was talking about Starbucks and spending $15 a day, $15, it didn't seem like a lot, but you think about it on an annual basis, that's $3,600 a year. So that $15 just snowballed into a huge budget buster.
I wanted to mention something I found useful. Yeah, coupons, like you can find coupons in the mail. But also for me it's upcycling. So like there's many items within like your own room or in your home that, like, rather than going and buying a container, I can use a shoebox and turn that into a container itself. So like, there's so many resources within my home. I just need to take the time to make them and then use them rather than buying something else. So yeah.
Wow, I like that, and it takes some creativity to do that as well. But I like it. Awesome.
Somebody commented in the chat that they get their paycheck every 2 weeks, but when they receive it, they wait one more week to deposit it. That's an interesting strategy. I like that. I bring lunch every day and treat myself to Starbucks only once or twice a week instead of every day. Somebody bought smart plugs so they can turn off outlets to save electricity. Love that. And Natalie was elaborating that she can plan her expenses with her current balance that she has in her bank account. I really love that because that makes you be a lot more intentional about your purchases. So that's a great strategy, Natalie. Thank you for sharing.
Awesome. I love it. A lot of great tips there. And also student discounts, always ask for it. Let that be the first thing you ask. You got a student discount. So, just a little way that especially vendors that are near the university want to keep your business and your patronage. So always ask for those student discounts. But one question I always get is, you create this great budget. How often should you check in on it? It's like it's your money. You should check in on a regular basis, but you really have to think about it in terms of, how you want to check on it frequently because you want to make sure that you're tracking your goal. Everything's on track to uh, to be successful in every goal that you have. So that's the important piece is frequency. And keep in mind too, your goals are going to change. You're going to have some new short-term goals. You're going to enhance your long-term goals. Right now, you just might be thinking about my long-term goal is to pay for college, but then it may be, hey, I want to buy a house, retire, those other things that are going to add, and they may adjust. So always check back on it and keep your sight on that path that you're following. And next, these are just a few resources that we have at Wells Fargo. And keep in mind, any relationship that you have, whether you have a bank, you're bank curious, they should have resources like this to help you. Because, we talked about earlier methods that we're using that we're comfortable with, that we use to track our spending. But if you have a resource that's going to make it easier, it's at least worth looking at. Your bank should have a resource where it allows you to track your spending, provided you're using one of their resources. Budget Watch, which allows you to track every spending in each category. Your savings plan, and those are things that should be basic for you to get at your financial relationship. And also, to follow up on some of the information that we shared today, please go to this link. It's a free resource. It's wellsfargo.com/financial health. And you'll see some of these resources. And also, you'll see additional information about credit as well. So I will pause there. That's the end of the presentation, but I'd love to hear from you all if you have any questions for me or anything that I've covered that you may have questions about.
There was a question earlier about if you should check your credit report, even if you don't have a credit card, I believe I'm trying to scroll up to get to it, but it was something yeah, should we check the annual credit report even if we have not started using credit cards, loans, etc.?
Absolutely, because your impression now is that you don't have any credit, but nothing's wrong with going on and making sure that's accurate and see what the credit bureaus are reporting. So if you have no credit, then you should be able to go there and it'll just only show your name and your birth date, which is fine. But make sure that you're not surprised when you do need credit to find something that you're unfamiliar with or something that's inaccurate that could be on your report. A great question.
Somebody was also asking for a little bit of additional information on the April 12th event. So the financial decision making.
Absolutely. One of the things that's important is, you know, I like using the term adulting. So when you uh, graduate, you know what to expect, you know, because everything's gonna fall on you. All your expenses that your parents, or I know someone said earlier, their father takes care of all the expenses. So all those things that you're concerned about are you're concerned about or things you don't know about. We're gonna do a simulation that will give you a real life experience. We're gonna give you uh, a, a profile where you would have an income, post graduation income, and you're going to be asked to make a decision on what expenses you should incur based on your income and the lifestyle that you want. And that was so important for us to have this foundational workshop to talk about budgeting. So next week when we do the simulation, you'll have the opportunity to kind of put a lot of this information that we went through today in practice. Did I miss anything, Kim? Or
No, so I just put additional information about the second part, and I'm actually going to put we already have the Go link for that ready to go. So let me just put that in there as well, just so you can save that. But there is a flyer that will be, it already has been advertised on some of the social media platforms that Student Government Association has. Oh, and yes, if you could please scan the QR code, that is a survey link. So if you could take some time to do that, that would be awesome. But we had another question. So how do you know you are a victim of identity theft? What are other ways, other than the ones you mentioned today, that you can reduce the chances of such an event? So I'll let you respond, Jeff, and I can add a little tidbit to whatever you say too.
awesome, awesome. Yeah, you know, it's really important to, you know, the methods that I mentioned. Those are more of a defensive measure, you know. So if someone goes on and tries to use my social to make a purchase or to file my tax return, I'll be notified. But other methods that I would recommend is be really careful of information that you share. I know I'm pretty sure none of you use social media at all. So I I'll just say this just because, but keep in mind, anytime you put anything on social media, you know, that's opening the door for someone to gather your information. So really be careful what you share, you know. And also when you're in an environment where if you have a roommate, I know I love my roommate, but I didn't leave things open mail out on the desk. I always secured uh, anything that had my information on it, or if I didn't need anymore, I would shred it. I don't share passwords. Don't give anybody your debit card. Things like that. You know, if it's opportunity for someone to get any of your information, you should think about where you're storing your personal information and who has access to it, because those are going to be the most common ways that you can be compromised. And there's various things that can occur online, sharing information online. And one thing that I do is, you know, for work purposes, I use my work email. But if I'm using email while I'm signing up to get promos and things, I have a junk email for that. So, you know, it's a lot of different things that you can do. I actually have a workshop that we talk about identity theft, but you know, just really be careful of information that you share and the availability for other people to actually see it. And Kim, you had something to add as well.
You actually, I mean, you touched on it quite a bit, but I can share from my perspective. I was actually looking at getting into a new apartment, and I went to fill out an application, and this was just from the owner that was renting it out. And he wanted a copy of my driver's license, and the application asked for my social security. And, you know, ever since I got my identity stolen, I realized how often we're asked so unnecessarily for our social security number. At doctor's offices, some of the forms still have it. I mean, I never answer that anymore, and nobody ever says anything to me. So, um, but he took my information, and I mean, it was for sure him. I am like 100% positive. I mean, I can't prove it, but right after that, my information was, I think, sold or given to somebody, and they tried to open a loan in my name. Luckily, it looked kind of fishy, and they called me to ask about it. So we prevented the loan from going through, but it was really such a headache. Even just to be able to get a police report, and in my head I was like, what are you going to do about this? And they're like, nothing, unless it's I mean, Jeff, you would be able to probably say more than, I don't know what the amount is. If it's like, what, 200,000 or some obscene amount of money that's stolen from you, the police don't really do much about it because it's such a big issue. So it was really, really quite a headache. So taking those preventative measures, keeping your information secure, don't give information out unless you know for sure you have to, and unless you think it makes sense that they're asking you for that information. Ask questions when people call you. When I get calls and they say, oh, I'm calling from AT&T or whatever. What was it the other day that I got? Somebody from our security company was asking me for some information, and it just seemed kind of sketchy to me. And I'm like, do you have a direct line where I can call you back, or I can look and make sure that this is the right number? I'm like, I'm sorry, I've been a victim of identity theft, and I want to make sure. And I went through that extra step to make sure that I was speaking to the right person, because he was asking me for personal information. So I'm just like super cautious now, but anything that you can do to try and just safeguard your information, that's just, the best, I think, approach, and monitoring your credit reports as well to make sure there's nothing fraudulent on there.
And I want to give you guys a couple other resources while you think of any additional questions. One is tuition funding sources, and the website is www.tuitionfundingsources.com. And what this is a scholarship sourcing website that's powered by Wells Fargo, that has over 7 million scholarships and 41 billion in funding. And the good thing about it is, this website, we don't share or sell your information. Is solely for the ability for you to source scholarships. I had a student that came back and thanked me a couple of months back. She went on and got a scholarship. It was a $1,000 scholarship. It was a don't text and drive $1,000 scholarship, and all she had to do was put in 140 characters of why she would text and drive, and she was awarded that scholarship. So there are many like that on the site that you can obtain. That one may not be there, but at the end of November, we actually sponsored one. It was a COVID scholarship community for students who did things in their community to help. To help fight the COVID epidemic. So you had to write a paragraph of what you did and how you impacted your community. So it's so many resources like that are available. Scholarships that are available. And I would say, hey, if you could spend 30 minutes a week, apply for 5 scholarships, you can easily get a lot of money towards your educational expenses. And that's all I have. Are there any other questions, Kim? Well, I want to thank you all for the opportunity.
There's no other questions. Sorry, I was just scanning the chat.
Okay. Well, yeah, I want to thank you all for the opportunity, for giving me the opportunity to share this information, and thank you for listening. I hope the information was helpful and you're able to take at least away one thing that you can apply to your daily life. And I really look forward to the workshop next week. And please complete the survey.
Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate you, Jeff. This was an awesome presentation. Please come next week to our part 2, and we look forward to seeing you there. And thank you so much to Student Government Association as well. I'm going to be sending a follow-up email with the budget toolkit, and also the time and date and go link for the next part 2 seminar of this series. So I'll be sending that information shortly. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and close out because I believe Sabrina had to step away a little bit early. Thank you, Jeff.
All right, thank
We'll
you.
see you next week.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.